what is it? Monday the
Monday.
22nd of June. Hey, this is Mark Etherington. You know him as Mountain Holler. And I'm so happy that he has joined us here on the show tonight. Mountain Holler is one of the most original and I think brilliant and fascinating musicians in St. Petersburg right now. And I'm so happy to have you here, my friend. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, man. It's really nice to be able to do this kind of thing amongst the wildfire that we're all trying to navigate.
There's a little bit of normalcy, you know, you find it where you can find it. You wanted to start, you're going to play some things for us tonight, but you said you wanted to start with something new. Tell us about this song.
Okay, so as an artist, I feel that if you have an innate talent and you create art as a means of filtering in your experiences in this world, you have an obligation to stick up for things and also amplify things that you believe in. And one of the things that I have been experiencing within the past couple of weeks was the Black Lives Matter movement and the protests that were going on. And I marched with the group in downtown St. Pete for about a week. And I left the marches because I was finding myself frustrated, not with the movement, because I was frustrated with my lack of ability to speak how I felt in an artistic way, right? Does that make sense? So I isolated myself pretty much in my room for about a week, set up my recording equipment, and just forced myself to sit down and write and muddle out all the feelings and emotions and thoughts I had about what we're experiencing, because I, for one, needed a way to filter through those emotions and those experiences I went through, but also to maybe create something that can be an amplification of the mindset and philosophy of what's happening. And so I ended up writing a song called Riot Lines that I literally just finished on Saturday morning, 2 days ago. Yeah. And if I could, I would love to play it.
Absolutely, man. The floor is yours.
Cool. All right. So
you played this at Kava the other day, did you?
I did, yeah.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, the Crowbar show got canceled. And
yeah.
Really, I was preparing for that set. I was the first artist on for the Crowbar show, and I was like, okay, it's like my first show back. I want to come out with something new. And it got canceled, and Tom and Joe did a great job of coordinating not only the event but also communicating why they closed down, and I commend them for it. And those are the risks we can't take right now. But I was fortunate enough to play the show at Kava Speakeasy Kava Bar, which was outside, and people were practicing social distancing and whatever. And I got to play it, and I got to do a test run of the song. But as things go, things get legs and continue to work on. So this will be technically the second time I've performed it live.
All right, fantastic. Yeah.
So, get into it?
Let's do it, man.
All right, let's do it. All right,
cool. It's all yours.
So, you can't see it, but I'm sitting at a desk, and I have a myriad of electronic gear around me and pedals. So you're going to hear some things come in.
Okay.
All right? So let me know if you can hear that. That should be coming. Actually, I'm going to switch to my board while I play this.
Okay. You know, man, it's not like the old days of Woody Guthrie just grabbed the acoustic and, there's all these plugins.
was in vain. How many more lay there dead? Same night out in the street, dying light, bombing your feet. In your home and love, need colored back. Give your mind enough. Feed the town. Did you know she was in bed? How much more lay there dead, lay there dead, lay there dead, lay there dead, lay the dead, lay the dead.
I'm going to tell you that I'm absolutely mesmerized.
Wait, I can't hear. Hold on, wait, I can't hear. I gotta plug back into my.
Oh, good. Well, I'll have to rephrase it. Go, plug in.
All right, I'm back. So,
I just want to tell you that I really am kind of mesmerized by the combination of this sort of atmosphere that you create and the emotion in it. You know, I've seen you play live a couple of times, and I have to know when and how you. This is when you hit this. I don't want to use the word formula. This is the way I want my music to sound. You and I come from very different generations, I'm afraid, and I watched you do these things, and you haven't dropped D there, but I've heard open tuning stuff that you do.
Drop
and for
C.
me, I'm sorry?
Drop C.
Oh, see, I don't even know what that is. See, you're already way ahead.
I'm a step further down.
For me, it comes from Joni Mitchell tunings and David Crosby tunings. We're different generations. Where did you hit upon this? Like, this is the way I sound coolest, or this is how I want to express what I do.
So you hit on it with David Crosby tunings.
Yeah.
Really, and this is like what I've come to understand for myself. it's all the acoustic Led Zeppelin songs. It's all of Jimmy Page's acoustic songs. So I started playing guitar when I was 12 years old. I played drums when I was 10. When I moved to Florida in 1999, I was 12, and the Catholic school that I went to had 2 elective classes open. One of them was like computer science, and the other one was acoustic guitar class. And so I chose.
Where's the choice there?
Yeah, exactly. You know, for a 12-year-old moving to Florida from Connecticut to a Catholic school. So really, I got into Zeppelin when I was really young, probably 10. And I grew up, like, my dad is a huge Neil Young, CSNY, Moody Blues, Doobie Brothers. I grew up with all of this really brilliant music, not knowing what it was. And then as I was getting into my own, my own way of liking what I liked and got into Zeppelin, it was really the acoustic stuff, especially on Led Zeppelin 3, that influenced me on my acoustic guitar playing, because I'm not a lead electric guitar player. I'll never be Jimmy Page. But when I heard the acoustic stuff and I had acoustic guitar, I was like, well, maybe I can learn that, right? Because it's simpler chords. And then as I started diving into that catalog of Page's acoustic stuff, I realized that he was using all of these alternate tunings.
Yeah.
And so from diving into Page's alternate tunings, also from getting into Neil Young, CSNY, the Byrds, I started discovering these worlds of acoustic guitar tunings that allowed for me to be a better guitar player for myself, because I'm not that good in standard tuning, right? Like I can do chords, whatever, but these open tunings to me represented doorways into.
I can see that. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so like tonight, like this is this guitar is tuned in D standard, but I have it dropped down to, no, I'm sorry, it's in C standard. So anyway, so like when you said like Joni Mitchell and all that stuff, as I got older and I started figuring out where these kind of influences came from to Page back in England in the early 70s, I started finding the Greenwich Village scene, and I found artists like Joni Mitchell and Robbie Basho and all of these experimental acoustic guitar players that had these really folk-based open tunings. Because back in Appalachian tunings, it's very simple, like dobros and dulcimers are tuned in open tunings, right? And so you find these, and also old blues like Son House played in open G and open B flat and open C, right? So from those worlds, I kind of just it enabled me to write the things that I felt like I could write, because I connected better with that type of musical window, if that makes sense.
Have you ever heard of Fred Neil? So one of those Greenwich folkies. Fred Neil. He's dead for a long time, but he wrote "Everybody's Talking," the big Harry Nilsson record. He wrote this wonderful song called "I've Been Searching for the Dolphins in the Sea."
All right.
He studied bottlenose dolphins for years. He was born in St. Petersburg.
Wait, really?
And he has a couple of really great tunes that have that almost like Indian kind of drone thing going on. Crosby was very influenced by Fred. And,
so Fred Neil.
Yeah, Fred Neil, N-E-I-L. Will the Circle Be Unbroken? It's what I'm saying. It's going around. I grew up listening to Neil Young. And have you heard this new record that just came out, Homegrown, from 75?
Yes. I just got goosebumps because you said that, because funny story, I've been fortunate enough to still be working through this pandemic a little bit. So my dear friend owns a gardening company, and we work in Florida native plants and doing installation. So we've been working a couple of days a week. But I had this thought the other day. I was in a very, all of our emotions are going up and down, right?
Right.
I was in a depressed state, and I was frustrated because I've been trying to write this song that I just played. I couldn't do it. And so I put on Neil Young, and I was listening to Harvest, and I was listening to Harvest, and I got so mad because I realized that I'll never be as good as Neil Young, right? But
I think I was 12 when I made that very discovery.
I'm 32 now, and I finally realized that. But I started listening to his new record, and I realized, like, it's not about being as good as someone else. It's about being as good as you can be for yourself, right?
Yeah.
The fact that he recorded that record back in what, the 70s?
Yeah.
And he's in 2020 now releasing it. Like, that's amazing. The fact that he recorded an entire record that just didn't get released, and now he's like, it just shows you how, like you said, like, what'd you say, the circle is unbroken, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's
And
art.
it resonated with you, didn't it? Did you listen to it and it was like, holy shit?
It knocked me back.
Yeah.
It literally, I put it on in my car.
Yeah.
And I left to go get food, and I came back and I sat in my car and listened to the entire record in front of my apartment.
Yeah.
And just sitting there, like, mind blown, because here is not only an individual that has gone through similar circumstances that we're going through right now, right? Like civil rights movements and the progressive nature of the United States, but also a member of the forefront of pop music. You know, back in the day, Neil Young was pop. The Rolling Stones and the Byrds, that was all considered pop music. It was the music that was being played on the radio, and we're not getting that anymore, you know?
Well, you know what? It's a great segue for me, Mark, because something that I really like about artists like you, what you do is you aren't making any commercial concessions. I mean, your stuff is really interesting. It's not like totally out there. I can't get into it. I mean, I have to get into a different place.
Right.
But it's like you're not trying to, you know, or maybe you are trying to, you know, get chicks or whatever, but you know, or have a hit. You know, it's true to yourself as an artist, is what I'm saying. That's what I've always respected about Neil too. He was able to make money and be successful, but he's also made some awful records and stuff just because that's what he wanted to do.
Awful. Well, yeah. one of my greatest, like, I go back to this, is that there's an interview with Graham Nash, right?
Yeah.
And he you know, they kind of ask him about Neil Young, I guess, off camera, and he sits there and he's like, you know, Neil never forgot his muse. He always trusted the muse, you know, and like, it was this like very profound thing about like Neil never gave up as an artist. Even when he produced shitty music and shitty work, he still believed in it because it's what he needed to do. And that's what's inspiring, right? As an artist, because like, you're right. I'm not writing music to be popular. I'm not, when I write a song, it's because I feel as if I need to write a song for my own mental health to get through this.
Exactly right. That's what artists are supposed to do. That's entirely right. I wanted to ask you, you know, was there a crystalline moment somewhere where like you use all that kind of reverb and stuff going on where and I alluded to this before, where you got to this place where you had this, turn it right here, you know, that sort of echoey stuff. That the word ambient is not what I want, but you know, like atmosphere.
Sure.
Did you finally like one day say, that's it? You know, I'm not going to be Graham Nash singing Teach Your Children in folky clubs. This is what I want. You know,
it's such a progression of how I've been able to make music. Really and this is the truth. When I first started playing guitar and singing, all I had in my room was a karaoke machine that my neighbor owned, and she let me borrow it when I was like 12. And the reverb setting on the karaoke machine was stuck. So everything that you played through it had this really
Are you kidding? This is so cool. Really?
No, I'm telling you, and also it had 2 tape decks that you could record on. So I was able to record myself and dub myself on these cassette tracks. And that's when I started writing, and it just had this innate thing. And also I was raised Catholic and going to Catholic school, and I was always really enamored by the choir inside of the cathedrals, because, you know, throughout history, Catholics created these cathedrals to literally come inside and you transcend to God, right? Like you go into this otherworldly place, but inside of this cathedrals, the acoustics are fucking mind-blowing, you know, and that's what reverb is, right? It's this huge reverberation. So I've always gone towards that. Also, it makes you sound better as a singer, right? Like a lot of reverb makes you sound better. It's like,
don't tell everybody that, but yes.
I know. Yeah, just throw a little reverb on it. So anyway, so that's kind of where I've always tried to emulate, and it's made me feel comfortable. And then as I've progressed, I've just I can speak on that. When I first started playing shows as Mountain Holler back in 2012,
Yeah.
I didn't have a PA, and I borrowed a speaker and a big ass mixing board from a friend of mine, and that's all I had. So when I used to go play these shows, I would just crank the reverb on it because it just made it sound better. And so I've at this point, now 2020, and having done this for about 8 years, I find that I can do, me as a singer and acoustic guitar is all acoustic, right? It's dry, whatever. Throwing in reverb in a specific way can amplify the harmonics of what I'm doing. And it ends up creating these phantom chords and sounds just in the reverb, right? So it ends up sounding bigger and more ethereal and better, honestly, than if I were just to be alone acoustic guitar. And that's something that I've been really working on,
Oh, it totally works, and it's especially around here. It's unique and a welcome thing. I want to do one quick thing.
Sure.
And I remember thinking, and I don't know if I'm sure this is public knowledge with you, but I remember thinking that the name had something to do with like a lonesome Appalachian thing in the mountains, and then I came upon this. And
yeah.
And you said, I mean, I'm not giving away any trade secrets here, but this is literally where you took the name from.
That's it.
Why?
Well, okay, so I used to play in a band called Set and Setting. I was one of the drummers.
Setting, yeah.
Set and Setting, yeah. When I first started playing out, one day, me and the other drummer, Stephen Handel, he and I had to go to Guitar Center. We were hungover, probably from playing a show the night before.
Right.
And we went into Save-A-Lot, which was next to the Guitar Center in Tampa.
Yeah.
And all I wanted was a Snickers bar and a Mountain Dew. And all they had was that drink, a Mountain Holler. And I'm like, God, this is so dumb. Mountain Holler. And I bought it and I was drinking it. And then that same day I did a video shoot with Ryan Zara for his series called St. Pete Beat. I don't know if you remember that series.
Heard of it.
Yeah. So that was the first exhibition I ever did as a solo artist. And
so he says, "Oh, you need to have a name."
So at the end of the video, we're like packing it up, and he's like, "Well, how do you want me to like label this as?" And I was like, "Well, I don't know. Like people fuck up Mark Etherington." And then Steven was like, "You pointed at the bottom." He's like, "You should go as Mountain Holler." And I was like, "All right, that's dumb, and let's do it." And like, it works, and it's funny because a lot of people have the same reaction you do, where it's like, "Oh, I hear the sound. It must be indicative of this thing." But it's not. It was a name given to me as a joke. But isn't that the universe, right? Like the comedy of the universe.
That's it's entirely where the name Jethro Tull came from. That obviously there was a guy called Jethro Tull in the 18th century, something in England, but they were at a gig, and they were just disagreeing on a name, and somehow somebody had a pamphlet. He was like he had something to do with seed splitting or something. He was an agriculturalist. And what's the name of this band then? Right before they go on, okay, it's Jethro Tull. And and all these years later, there's Ian Anderson still living with that,
Well,
so you're Mountain Holler till death do us part,
I got no choice. I didn't have any choice in the matter, and I don't have a choice now.
So listen, we're actually getting near the end of our half an hour, but I wanted to talk about the Skyway Bridge disaster documentary, which Steve Yerra had said that he'd heard your music somewhere. Maybe it was Frankie Vanderbo, but somebody said this is what we want in this documentary. I don't know if you know that I wrote a book about the disaster, and I
didn't know that.
Well, I did. Go watch the movie again. I'm in it. Your music's in it longer than I'm in it, but I'm in it. And so I was fortunate enough to be interviewed. And I've lived with that event and its history for many years now. And your music was absolutely perfect for this film, which you can still see on Amazon, I think.
Check it out, Amazon, yeah.
There you go, yeah. How did they approach you for that? I mean, what do you remember about it? And what did they tell you?
It's one of those things, just like the serendipitous nature of Mountain Holler. I was playing the Gasparilla Festival of the Arts back in 2018, and I was playing with June Bustamante. She and I were playing a set, and she took a break. She went off stage, and I played 2 songs. I played Sparkle and Great Disguise, which if you watch the documentary, those are the two songs that are in the documentary.
Yeah.
While I was playing those songs, Steve Yared and Frankie Vanderboot were at the festival, heard me playing, went over to June, gave her Steve's card and said, my name's Steve, blah, blah, blah. Have him contact me. I'm making a documentary. Okay. I get off stage. June's like, this guy came over, gave me his card, told me to tell you to contact him. He's making a documentary. And I'm like, yeah, okay. That's what everyone says. But I follow through, right? Because opportunity is opportunity. So I messaged Steve and I was like, hey, I got your card. What's up? And fast forward, he was like, basically, I heard your music. I want it. It was perfect for the documentary. And what was even more serendipitous was that the lyrics for those two songs were so matched perfectly to the concept of what he was trying to portray in the documentary, that it was something above either one of us. And when I came and read, the first time I watched half the screening of the film, and I sat next to Steve and I'm like, man, like, I don't know if you read these lyrics, but I had written down the lyrics. I handed it to him and we listened. He read them as we listened to it together, and he kind of looked at me and I was like, yeah, like,
there you go.
This is kind of,
serendipity.
It's beyond us. Yes. And then of course, I had those two songs that he wanted to use. And then he asked me if I'd be willing to write an original for the movie. And I said, yeah.
Will you play that for us now?
Sure. Yeah. And it's interesting because I have only played it a few times live. But I spent a lot of time on it. And last March, I went on tour for about 2.5 weeks up to Asheville and back. And on that tour, I started working on the song. And I was getting really frustrated. And there was a lot of renditions of the song. And finally, it just clicked. And I wrote it and I recorded it with a very, very dear and old friend of mine, Rob Ossington, who is a phenomenal musician and a phenomenal producer. And then for the people watching, if you watch the documentary, you'll hear the accomplished piece, which I'm playing acoustic guitar, electric guitar, drums, vocals, and bass. And Robbie Ossington wrote a mellotron part for it. And then Mr. Nick Ewing from Ashley Smith and the Random Currents, he came in and he did the violin segment for it. So, but when we spoke earlier today and you mentioned it, I had to go run home from the Airbnb and get this guitar because this is a guitar in that tuning. And I haven't played it. So this is, but here we go. So if you're down.
Okay, well, I want you to take us out tonight because we're hitting our time. Mark Etherington, Mountain Holler, such a pleasure to talk to you. Can you still hear me?
I can hear you, yeah.
Okay, I was going to say thanks.
Yeah.
And, hopefully we'll have some gigs soon and the world will turn around to a happier, healthier place.
Yeah, and, for those watching, be safe. And whatever it is that you believe in, stick strong to it, because right now we're in a place in which people need to establish a lot of gumption. So here's Raise the Skyway.
Thank you, my friend. Thanks, Mark. Have a good evening.
I gotta switch back over. I'm back. Sorry.
No worries, man. I got sun in my eyes. I'm going to say goodnight. Thanks
Hey,
for
man.
playing. That's beautiful, man. I'll see you soon, okay?
Yeah, I really appreciate this, Bill, and I hope you're safe and take care.
Take care, brother.